Watsky's new album, Times Infinity, has been tapping at me for a while now. Whilst I would have liked to put out this review a bit earlier than now, there would be times where I would film this review, edit it, and be ready to upload it, and then something new for me to say about the album would keep popping up in my mind, meaning that I would have to go back and refilm it. But now I've completely collected all my thoughts and I've come to a conclusion, because this album has kind of frustrated me a little bit. I enjoyed it to an extent, but there were some things that really dragged it down for me. I mean, I have enjoyed Watsky's very original and personality-vibrant approach to pop rap, because I find it very colourful and fun, especially on albums like Cardboard Castles, which is my personal favourite to this day. But even when his music is colourful and fun at times, it does become very serious and thoughtful when it needs to be. And this was a reason that I actually did enjoy his last album, All You Can Do. I know it didn't quite strike the right key with a lot of people, but I thought, for the most part anyways, this album brought a solid balance between silly laid back and serious think piece, and in a way that wasn't too jumbled or clashy. Times Infinity seems to have kind of struggled with sorting this out. You have songs that are trying to have a little bit more fun, shown by the rapid-fire, fun-loving punchlines effortlessly speeding past Watsky's lips on the track Don't Be Nice, or the laid-back and relaxed attitude of Chemical Angel, where Watsky's basically talking about how much he craves comfort and how much he doesn't want to lose the fun and the excitement in his life. And then you have a whole bunch of other tracks, like the 4-part Pretty Things Sweet at the back end of the album, comprised of 4 different tracks: Conversations, Knots, Roses and Theories, or the track Stick to Your Guns. And on these tracks, Watsky's actually putting together some pretty serious and real thoughts. Thoughts that are very articulate, very meaningful, stuff that will actually provoke some thought in your mind. And having both categories of song, silly and serious, is pretty much all part of a Watsky record. You kind of go in expecting there to be some of one category and some of the other. But Times Infinity kind of struggles to switch between these styles in a way that makes sense or even feels necessary, because the overarching theme of this album seems to be existential themes of purpose in life, or just human existence in general, and these are kind of summed up in tracks like Talking to Myself or The Pretty Things Sweet, like I mentioned earlier. And Watsky's lyrics are what make these parts of the album blossom. Other tracks like Stick to Your Guns kind of tackle other serious issues, like the topic of a school shooting, where on that track Watsky dedicates each of the 3 verses to a different viewpoint of the shooting. The first is of the shooter themselves, the second is of the media reporting on the shooting, and the third is of a politician making a speech in response to the shooting. Whilst there is a level of caricature going on in the way that Watsky presents these viewpoints, I don't think there is a overarching opinion or message being presented here, but rather Watsky is just presenting you with 3 viewpoints and leaving it up to the listener to make their own opinions, which I think is a clever move from Watsky here, because that is essentially what the song is trying to promote, not letting the media decide or appeal to your pre-existing opinions, which is a really solid point brought up on this track. However, on moments of the album where Watsky tries to sound comical or to slide in fun-filled tracks amongst serious ones, things become a bit of a mess. Take Going Down, for example, cringiest track on the entire album. Also, the most misplaced one on the track by far. A whole song dedicated to talking about the experience of going down on a girl, eating her out, and then this whole verse about sexuality and how even though Watsky considers himself straight, there's no denying that maybe one day he'll have a cock in his mouth. Like, I just don't. It's unnecessarily explicit, and the worst part is it's in a part of the album where Watsky is actually taking a more serious edge and then throwing this really sexual, corny and horny track amongst those songs is just a completely unnecessary move. Breaks the mood and the flow of the album. And you could argue that Watsky is just presenting his signature comical lines that will occasionally make you wince because some punchlines are just so corny. And that usually happens on a Watsky song, because he's just this fun-loving guy that really likes to show off how much of a regular guy he is, that likes to have a bit of fun every now and then. And I will admit that on the track Going Down, and on other tracks as well, Watsky does showcase a very good amount of skill. Well, not very good, an extremely good amount of skill when considering the rhyme scheme of a verse or the flow of a verse. He has all these things in mind when he writes the verses of a track, and you can tell because when he actually raps the verses, they actually come off really catchily. The lyrics just flow like butter. It's more just the lyrics themselves, what's actually being said, and that's kind of what makes Going Down a painful track to sit through. And then you have tracks like Pink Lemonade, which try to fuse both silly and serious by having fun and having some sort of political edge to the lyrics. And the lyrics aren't the bad part of the song. In fact, they're probably the song's strongest point, with Watsky running off punchlines like, I wouldn't trust you to run with adult scissors, when he's referring to politicians that are running for president right now. Or when he's saying the world's split into two kinds of people, those who split the world into two kinds of people and the type who don't, which I thought was a pretty clever punchline. However, the instrumental and the production on this track, that's the biggest problem here, and it makes the whole song just unbearable to listen to, because the production and the beat is just awful. The combination of zombie-sounding, multi-layered vocals over the top of this sharp, bassy beat that sounds like the equivalent of shattered glass that just pricks in your ears, that combination just does not work. And when the hook comes around, where this R&B or soulful jazz-inspired vocal tries to go over the top of that, the sounds and the styles just get even clashier. In fact, the whole jazz-inspired production on tracks like the end of Don't Be Nice, or Pink Lemonade, or Little Slice, or Springtime in New York, that kind of production style leaves some songs feeling like they were borrowed from Kendrick Lamar's last album, To Pimp a Butterfly. And hear me out, there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to take a little slice, from Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, because I can tell that album is going to be very influential because of the way that it just takes a bit of everything. It takes neo-soul, jazz, and puts it into hip-hop, and in a way that sounds very vivid and appealing. But when Watsky and crew try to put it on Times Infinity, on these couple of tracks near the start of the album, it doesn't feel like it has a purpose on the album. They feel uninspired, and they don't feel like they make sense within the context of the album, because they're only on around 4 tracks, and then that style just takes a run, and it doesn't come back on the album again. It leaves that jazz influence feeling kind of pointless. However, the production on tracks isn't always bad, right? I will make that clear. On tracks like Yes Britannia, I love the very lush and uplifting beat on that track, or the uplifting vibes on Brave New World, featuring Chaos Chaos, the choir vocals, the orchestra at the end. It all sounds very cinematic and majestic, and in a way that actually really worked for Watsky. Or on the opening track, Tiny Glowing Screens, which just kicked off the album with a whole load of energy, and this follow-up to parts 1 and 2 of Tiny Glowing Screens, which were on Cardboard Castles. Or on the track Midnight Heart, where the grimy and noisy instrumental during Watsky's verses sound very fierce and intimidating. But a big highlight for me is during that Pretty Thing Suite, where over the course of those 4 tracks, the mood just changes so abruptly to the point that it's just so emotionally grabbing. On the first track, Conversations, the piano-based instrumental is in this major key, and then when it transitions over to Knots, it turns into a minor key and becomes dark. And the abrupt cut to silence halfway through Theories actually caught me off guard. Made a lot of sense, and a lot of chilling sense when you consider that this cut to silence was in the middle of a verse that started to show more hope, and it just went to show in a very haunting and chilling way that life can just simply end when you're least expecting it. Not only that, but the 2 or 3 minutes of silence or street ambience, or faint street ambience at the end of the record actually loops nicely with the opening track as well, which fits nicely into the idea of Times Infinity. The bonus track, Exquisite Corpse, is this 10-minute long track with various guest verses. It's set in some sort of post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's very entertaining, a bit long-winded, but very entertaining, with loads of humor and loads of surreal images of Iggy Azalea and killer clowns. It's a fun ride. Definitely something for the fans to enjoy after a whole load of tracks about existential themes and one track about eating a girl's pussy out. Even Daveed Diggs from Clipping makes a guest appearance here, which actually shocked me, but in a nice way. I mean, I have some notable complaints about this new Watsky record. I do think it has a load of problems in terms of production and lyrics and consistency that kind of, you know, there is a focus on this album, generally. However, I wish there was a lot more focus on that focus, because Watsky seems to be switching between silly and serious too often, and in a way that just feels very jumbled and incohesive. But I do appreciate that Watsky tried to venture into different styles, into different moods over the course of one album. It's just that it didn't exactly flow in the best of ways. And I also do give kudos to Watsky for, once again, managing to showcase his very vibrant and likable personality as a rapper, as well as his very apparent skill when it comes to writing verses based on a very catchy rhyme scheme or a very nice flow. I mean, he is a very good rapper, let's not forget that. 4 times Infinity, I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10.